flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent. All right. Yeah, I need you guys here every week. I really have to keep it going. I feel like I'm a little slow. All right, let's see. For the board, can we get a approval of tonight's agenda for January 22nd?
Motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good. Can we get a motion to approve the minutes from January 8th?
Motion to approve the minutes from January 8th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, very good. Next up, we've got the school committee chairperson comments. I don't have any comments this evening. So we can move on to community comments. Does it look like we've got any hands raised in the room? You guys all want to talk later? Anybody online, Sam? No, right, all right. Well, we can move on to student comments because they're the best part. We've got two student reps tonight. We got Alan and Hannah. Just want to give us an update?
Yeah, totally. So to recap some stuff that's been going on these past weeks, on January 11th, Mendon-Upton brought some of its competitors to the first competition for DECA this year. It was a two-day event at the DCU Center in Worcester. It was an extremely successful day. We brought back 22 first place winners, 20 second place winners, and another 24 finalists that will be moving on to the state's competition in March at the Prudential Center. Our written projects have worked hard to produce several projects based on things like finance, fundraising, giving, awareness. Some of the topics you may have heard of range from bringing in public speakers from Detect Together cancer research, developing best buddies, Kyle Cares mental health, and so many more. And one of them is taking place tomorrow. Tomorrow we have our financial literacy fair being held during the day in order to teach our sophomore class about financial responsibility. There'll be a public speaker and a Monopoly style game set up in the gym for students to participate in hands-on activities and learning opportunities in order to complete the game and have a chance to win some prizes.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah.
So we're working in Drama Guild on our musical that'll be coming up February 9th to 11th. Today we had a fight choreographer come in, which was really cool for some of the musical numbers we have. In the GSA, the Gender Sexuality Alliance, we're going to be traveling to Norfolk Aggie for a Valentine's Day dance coming up on February 2nd, which is really exciting. And I mentioned a bake sale a few weeks ago, and we're hoping to get that started soon. And also Inspired Learning Day coming up soon. I've talked to some friends and my siblings who are in the young club in Misco, and everyone's really excited about that coming up on February 6th.
Awesome. And what play is it again? I know you've told us earlier.
Percy Jackson musical.
Percy Jackson. Awesome. Awesome. All right. I think.
Can I add?
Yeah,
one thing?
please.
Fallon left something out in her report.
And that would be
That she also was
something big.
she was the first, also a first place winner
Oh, but
with
who's
her
counting?
group at DECA. So she is one of the people who brought home some of those prizes. I can't wait to hear. She doesn't want to talk about herself, but I
Thank
wanted
you
to.
so much.
Yeah, they did a good
Excited
job.
to, develop it.
Right.
All right, back to you.
One more time.
All right. How about the Memorial Elementary School students school newspaper presentation?
Cool. Good evening. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Katie Denton, and I have the honor of teaching technology at Memorial School. Thank you so much for having us all here tonight to share an exciting new opportunity that our fourth graders have this year, which gave them a chance to choose what enrichment opportunities they wanted to participate in throughout this school year. As a team, we decided to give the fourth graders the chance to choose from offerings by all of the specialist teachers for their sixth special of the week, which happens during the fourth grade teachers' data meetings. Specialists offered choices of chorus, yoga, bookmaking, Zentangle art, or making a school newspaper. For each trimester, students work on one of the choices with the exception of chorus, which lasts the entire school year. So I've brought 3 students with me tonight, Navisha, Bradley, and Cam, who all worked on the first trimester newspapers, which you have in front of you, called the MES Press, to share about their experience.
To create the newspaper, we went through a 4-stage process. We had to brainstorm ideas to incorporate into our newspaper. We had people come up with ideas like games, comics, book reviews, and articles about our school.
Next, we each chose the part that we were interested in creating and got to work on it. We used different applications and programs to create our parts, and then we shared them with Miss Dunton. Miss Dunton used a Canva template to create the draft of the newspaper. Then we all got together and worked to edit and revise the newspaper to look the way that we wanted it to. Finally, we distributed the newspaper around the school to every classroom.
My favorite part of the experience was writing and using different technologies to create my writing. I enjoy writing and being creative.
My favorite part of making the newspaper was discussing my ideas with others and creating new things. I was able to make Sudoku puzzles, which was a lot of fun. I also learned how to use Google Sheets and was able to be creative.
Something that I learned in this class was how to work with others better. I also learned how to use Google Forms, which will be useful in the future. I used Google Forms to collect questions about an article that I wrote about Diwali. Because of this experience, I was inspired to write my own newspaper for our classroom.
For me, I learned how to write an email the correct way. I had to write one to Miss Bell and Miss Chuk. I had to ask them to write an article for the paper. I learned how to create a Sudoku puzzle. I had to try several different ways and it didn't work the first time. So I had to go back and start again. Eventually, I found a Sudoku generator that helped me create my final product.
We really enjoyed this class and hope the MES Press continues on for years to come. Do you have any questions for us?
If you did the word search, it's too hard.
I believe that was Braden.
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, it's Braden.
So how did the strawberry creeps come out?
Sarai.
Oh yeah, one of the other people in our group did that.
Excellent. Did they bring them in to share?
No.
Unfortunately.
Anybody else?
I just want to let you know that the weird but true section might be my favorite section. Will you be keeping that and all?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Hopefully. I'm not in here.
We met this morning and the next group decided to keep that.
That's fun. I love that stuff. Nice job.
Nice job.
Great. So John, that's all. Good job, man. Good job.
Happy guys.
All right. I think we turn over to Dr. Cohen for superintendent administrator for comments.
Yeah, thank you. We have a few things today, but I'm happy to be able to start with recognition of our athletic director, Mr. Chris Schmidt. Do you mind coming and sitting next to me? I know. Thank you. So we all know Chris, of course, but he was named the Division II Athletic Director, District 2 Athletic Director of the Year. Thanks, he's wonderful. Stuff too. All right, so he was selected and that's by the Massachusetts Secondary School Athletic Directors Association, which he's been a member of for quite some time and also served in a lot of roles there. We had a recent press release that came out and co-principals, Marianne Moran and Mr. Clemens congratulated Chris, citing his leadership and significant accomplishments on behalf of the district. Its students, some things that they mentioned were how he revitalized parent groups when he came on board, established leadership training for student athletes. He revamped the awards and celebrations and how we did that. And you all are familiar with the launching of the esports programs, which I hear is going to be in the local Mendon-Upton Free Press. There'll be an article coming out about some of that sometime soon as well. He's also used his advocacy to expand awareness of mental health. He collaborated with Kyle Cares Foundation to host a conference with all Dual Valley Conference DVC captains. And I know you've heard a lot about Kyle Cares, and that was actually, we just were on, what did I send out? It was the eye opener.
Yeah,
Channel 5. Channel 5 eye opener. I watch it every morning. The one morning I don't watch it, apparently Nitmuc was on. So that was pretty cool. Students receive training, knowledge, inspiration to use athletics to promote and destigmatize mental health. And this led to a formation of a student club to continue the vital work. One of the quotes that the principals, I know them, they're back here, but they said over the course of his years at the school, Chris has led, without exaggeration, a transformational change in our athletic department. He began his work by meeting with student athletes, coaches, teachers, parents, and community members to learn about their hopes for our athletic program. He then skillfully developed a formal vision and action plan that have helped Nitmuc athletes and athletics not only to achieve in competition, but also to be a driver of our core values and a tremendous source of school and community pride. So hopefully we're not embarrassing too much here having you next to us, but I have been just thrilled with the work that he's done. I know I will always pop in to his office and chat about whatever is happening and what's going on and what we can do to make a difference in our programming, and have found you to be so easy to work with. I don't know if all athletic directors are easy to work with out there. Maybe they are, I don't know, but in the few that I've had, you definitely have been the top of my list. So congratulations on that honor. So if you don't mind, we're gonna take a picture and we have a little something to recognize you.
In front of the table.
Yeah, we like to get
Spot.
photos.
All right.
Congratulations. Have a good time, we can clap. I don't know if you want to say anything.
Certainly, thank you very much. Sorry to believe it's been 9 years so far. I've enjoyed every minute. I really have. It's been a pleasure to come to work every day, and being athletic director was something that was a long time dream, and the fact that you guys took a chance on me and hopefully haven't regretted it. So, I greatly appreciate it, and I look forward to continuing. So thank you.
Great. So I want to move on and just give a couple quick reminders about some upcoming events. I know I've mentioned the last few meetings, but I think it's important because they're pretty big events that are coming up. We have the Nitmuc Science Symposium that is scheduled. Is it this Wednesday? Oh, that's it wrong as well. This Wednesday, I said Thursday. We are keeping an eye on the weather for some events tomorrow night and into Wednesday. I guess the snow is coming in, or a couple inches starting in the evening, so it may impact something at night. We have the course at Memorial Club, 4th grade course, right? And then in the morning we have the symposium. So I'll probably put a little message out, or we'll know like in the afternoon, and then we'll make a decision on that. But we're excited about that. We also have the kindergarten information nights that are coming up. Memorial and Club are hosting them on January 24th from 6 to 7, and the Spanish immersion kindergarten night is scheduled for February 8th. We have the Wizards game coming up. I can't believe it, this weekend. I still have to submit. Apparently, some of us have to submit how we're gonna be announced, so I gotta work on mine. What we're gonna say about me, but we have a nice, incredible dream team. We have a few members on the dream team in the audience here tonight. And we also have a Nipmuc showcase where we're gonna be welcoming middle school students and their parents and guardians to visit Nipmuc. And that'll be Wednesday, January 31st from 6:30 to 8. And so we'll just keep updating in newsletters. And there's plenty of other events, and we already heard about the, soon after we have Drama Guild as well. Any questions on the upcoming events?
You should just let Hannah and Fallon pick a name for you and be a little surprised.
Maybe it should be a surprise.
Just
I'll make sure to
super.
record it, we can put it on the big screen. Recap it.
Will be good. So it's always a fun time to see everybody out there. And then now into just a mid-year progress report. I don't know if you can pull that up, Sam, that presentation link. That's it. Right. Yep. Okay, so we have, I'm gonna go quickly through this. And every year at the beginning of the year, we tell you what our action plans are, strategic priorities are for the year and the steps that we're taking. Around this time mid-year, I'll give a couple highlights. In the tracking document, you have all of our progress so far. We like to use the color coding, so we sort of have, like, if we haven't started it yet, red, yellow, something we've started, green would be something we've completed. The goal at the end of the year is to get through, a lot of those steps in that presentation, in all of our action steps there. And so it all is based off of our 4 strategic priorities, which you have here. And then what I did in the presentation is I just kind of go through each of them, and I'll give a few highlights and some things you've heard about, a few things you might not have yet. But if you could go to the next slide, please. The first one we're going to start with is our strategic goal, number 1, which is related to deeper learning. And I think you've probably heard a lot of presentations so far this year related to deeper learning, and now hopefully you're familiar with that and some of the work that we're doing. Can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So on this next slide here, you'll see that for all of our strategic priorities that we have, the ones in that I highlighted for you in green are the ones that we're focusing on from the 5-year plan this year. And what I do in the next few slides, I break them down, and then I'll do a couple highlights underneath each of them. So in those categories, the first category is related to the deeper and authentic learning. And the few areas I'm going to talk about is how we've been working on creating a shared definition of deeper authentic learning to support the development of instruction and providing PD instructional support in the creation and implementation of PBL. And PBL is project-based learning for those who aren't familiar with that. And I'm also going to touch upon showcases of learning related to embedding portrait of a learner into our school practice. I'm not going to touch upon flexible schedules right now because that's something that's more in the second half of the year that we're starting to work on. So we'll give at the end of the year some updates related to that. Next slide. All right, so for each of these, what I'm going to do is just give you a brief overview of some highlights. I feel like in some cases, when I came over to Nipmuc, they have a full, it's kind of like this size, that this is just half of it, of an activity they did with their staff on how to level up authenticity with all the factors of authentic learning. And it was so amazing to observe this with the teachers on all the different aspects of their work that I've been walking around with it, for months. I don't have it right now, of course, but like for months in my bag. And every time when I did my coffee chats earlier in the fall, I would pull it out. I talked to whoever was at the chat, and even I talked to them about some of the work that we're doing to level up our authenticity in our work. So some things that have happened so far, they have trained department chairs in a full day meeting. We had a lead learner workshop, and that was pretty incredible because when I walked into the room, I was a couple of minutes late. I walk into the room, imagine this entire room is just full of faculty members. We had administrators in here and students, lots and lots of students who were here and participating in the work and to take a look at how to level up, authenticity and what that looks like in our learning and in our practice. Something else that they did, there was a model professional practice school, and you've heard of those in the past where that's something that teachers can opt into. And it was adopted by 80% of the classroom teachers to do this work, to work on developing, revising, and publishing authentic learning experiences. So you'll hear more about it as we continue throughout the year, but the framework that we had has been put into practice and has been really helpful for our teachers. If you go to the next example, please. Certainly you've heard about deeper learning in regard to our project-based learning expansion that's been going on the last couple of years as part of our school leadership network participation. And the upper left-hand corner is a picture of a recent PBL training that we hosted through the Blackstone Valley that Cheryl had talked about. And I kind of added up. First, you have this training. We're training our people. Then we're applying the gold standard of practice for PBL and all the various elements of project-based learning. And what they do is to keep almost leveling that up to and refining their practice. And then on the bottom, which might be a little bit hard to see, but I took a little screenshot. It's a large, schedule that we have at middle school. And I took a screenshot just to show you that they've created a calendar. And so you can see at the school level, grade by grade, where their various PBL projects are taking place. So for example, if you recall at the last school committee meeting, I think it was the last one where we had Brenda Webster, who was here, and also with Rob McMurray's class in 5th grade, and they were here to talk about their project-based learning. That's part of this work. That's actually, I think, in here. And at the end of last year, when I talked about equity at Misco Hill, I talked about all the presentations that students came forward and even presented to us of different ways that we can make improvements at Misco. And then we've been trying to work with students to make those improvements. Questions on that one? I'll keep going unless you have. Yep.
Just where do they get their ideas for projects? Is that from a generally published source, or is that?
Well, that's a great question. Yeah, so 2 different ways. Sometimes you start with what you could do an approach of like, what are problems that you want to solve? And so that's something you might see in some of the civic action projects, where it's like, what's going on in the world? What do you care about? What do you want to solve? And then that's how you develop. So that's how that equity one was with Robin Murray's class, because it was, what do you want to work on at Misco and solve a problem here related to equity? And then that's how it started. Other times, the teachers have come together and brainstormed some ideas and like a theme for everyone to work on. And so that's been a different type of project. And also because we're been members with this group, you can actually access online examples of different project-based learning, and you can take ideas and kind of adapt them as well. So it probably comes in multiple ways. That's a really good question. All right, next slide. So portrait of a learner, something hopefully you're starting to become familiar with over the last few years. And what we've been trying to do is to really embed it into our school practice. We started this last year and it's continuing this year. And these are a few highlights from this year. So we started the elementary, that on the bottom left-hand corner is over at Clough, and it says, it's hard to see, so you can kind of blow it up later, but it says like, I am a mindful learner. Right. And so in that 4th grade class, the students reported how they were a mindful learner and gave examples of it. In the top picture, top left, that's for Memorial. And when they have their all-school assemblies, they're connected to Portrait of a Learner. And so that theme has been brought into a lot of the readings that they've had for read alouds. Let me know if I'm saying, I'm looking at Memorial right here. Their read alouds and also some of the activities that they've had. In the middle, and we'll probably bring them in maybe later on this year, but our art department, for example, and this is a poster that was in one of the art classes at the middle school where they've adapted. So now you have people starting to adapt Portrait of a Learner into their content areas. This is one example of taking a portrait of a learner and applying that into what that means as being a portrait of an artist. And then you'll see when you go in the classes that they're starting to embed it in practice in what they're doing. And you can see that in all of the art classes, but this is one, a great middle school example. And then now at the freshman seminar, when students come up to Nipmuc, and Tara Bennett, this was from, I think, one of her classes. These students, do you remember we had the profile of a learner, like the Portrait of a Learner is called a profile. And you had them in the hallway, like in the past, saw that. So we had like kind of some students were working on that in the past. Now we're expanding it so all students will get it starting in freshman year when they learn about Portrait of a Learner, and then they start to develop that. And this is the students presenting out at it in class. So I just want to give you a sampling so far this year, just of a few examples. There are many more, and we'll continue to try to highlight them for you of how we're trying to explicitly embed it. So it's part of what we're doing, and you'll always hear about a lot with our Inspired Learning Days, but we expand beyond that. Right. So I'm going to move on to the strategic goal number 2, which is all related to high quality curriculum instruction and building skills to enable a collaborative approach to use data. So you'll hear a lot about data and also adjustments to practice and how we're supporting monitoring progress through curriculum instruction and assessment. This is a bigger one. We have multiple categories that we decided to do some work on this year. And so I'm gonna try to jump through some of the highlights in the next slide. So I'll focus first on data systems and then curriculum. And then go to the next slide. And then I'm not going to talk about common assessments tonight. And then I'll just give you an example related to instructional coaching. So the first example, hopefully this might be a little familiar. We have presented on this in the past, and when Cheryl came forward and talked about assessments in our data inquiry earlier this year, she kind of went in depth in some of the work that we're doing. But one of our action steps was to implement a consistent process for data inquiry. And she's done an excellent job, lots of input from the leadership team. Colleen has been a huge help with this as well. And I'll show you on the next slide in a minute, you know, how it kind of is starting to be used in action, but it's really working with our teachers and our staff through this inquiry cycle and all the stages. So if you go to the next one, thank you. For each of the stages, you have a similar type, it's broken down, where you have different questions that you can ask. So if we were in noticing, we would go through as a team and see what we notice is going on. And then if you notice on the right, where notice now, on the right, you have, those are actually, we're not going to click in there because it's just an image, but in the actual document that they use, those are links to protocols that can be used for this notice section. So if I had multiple slides, I could show you every other layer of it, where you could link in and then do some work. And then they've been working on different scaffolds and practicing. So this is just the beginning stages of this, using this inquiry cycle. But what they've started to do is start to use it and identify common and areas of focus for their teams to then be working on. Next slide. Something I had to talk about, especially with our elementary leaders in the room, is the work that we're doing in regard to completing our reading and writing scope and sequence and pacing guides for pre-K to 4. Something that's just clearly stood out, like if you walk through classrooms with me at the elementary schools, what you would see everywhere is a very distinct, clear focus on writing. There is evidence over both schools everywhere in PD, in meetings, in classrooms, in conversations, at faculty meetings, to their focus on improving writing at the elementary level. And that comes from work and looking at the data and areas for growth, which is tied to the data inquiry cycle as well. And they've done just an awesome job. So on the left, you have just one of the thousands of pictures I could have put in there of some work in a classroom. And on the right, you have some examples of some teachers when we would bring teachers together from both of the schools and looking at different samples of writing and starting to develop like common understandings using rubrics, et cetera, related to the writing standards. So they're just doing an awesome job with that. And I look forward to hearing more at the end of the year of their progress that they've made. Go to the next one. Also very exciting. We have, when I was in a different seat and role, we started right before COVID, we started the curriculum review cycle. We had already had our curriculum written out. We launched in a few areas. You may recall we had, for those who were here, a social studies review, a wellness review. We started into English and then COVID hit and put a pause on like half a year's work on that. We are now reestablishing that cycle of review, and thanks to the work of Cheryl's leadership and working with the teams and working with all the schools to kind of assess how we can get back in line of a review. And that connects to looking at our curriculum and making updates, also budget decisions. And, you know, we're always looking at new materials, what are our needs, and getting input on that. And so we're starting the next review cycle. It's not, it may look static, but it's not. Sometimes we will readjust based off of different needs. A great example I always give is like when science standards came out in one year, then that next year needed to be the year that we were reviewing science standards. You know, so sometimes we may change the order based off of what's happening externally. Right. And the last example is related to instructional partner teams and parameters of their work. So Cheryl and Colleen have been helping to lead the instructional partners, with which we have people participating from all of the schools. And what we were supposed to on the snow day that we just had, which was really sad, because if you look in the right, even though it's probably hard to see, but you can blow up the picture after if you want to like get into it. But they've been working all year to develop what deeper learning would look like in the classroom, what inclusive practices would look like. And that's kind of a little screenshot of that work. But we were all supposed to do some instructional rounds together with the some of the members of the leadership team, as well as the instructional partners, to start kind of having deeper conversations about that and what that might look like in classrooms. And so it's rescheduled to next week from that snow day. But the team, it's a great group of teachers and staff members from all the schools that have been working through how they can better support and add leadership to help support their colleagues as well. So strategic goal number 3 is related to equity, inclusion, and well-being. We've talked over the past number of years related to the MTSS systems of support, so multi-tiered systems of support. So something should be a little bit familiar from previous years. And I'll be touching upon these first 3. You can go to the next slide. So we have 2 categories. I'm not going to talk about that SEL one this time. I'm just going to give a couple of highlights. So next slide. Thank you. So one thing I'm really proud of the work that we've been doing is we've been focused from day one on how to develop a strong sense of well-being and belonging through various approaches like book studies or professional development. I don't even recall if I've shared it with you, some of the work we're doing just even as a leadership team. So we're leading the whole teacher. So every other meeting we'll go through and work on its ways to support teachers and teacher belonging. And so then we apply some of the strategies. So it's like a light read, but it's been helpful because it just gets us to talk about different things. I'm sure we're going to be building upon that as well. And additionally, tried to squish it in there, but this was an image from the last PD day that we had. The header of positivity starts with a focus on us, and the focus of the last PD day was what I need. And so that it was what our teachers need. And we wanted to do a lot about, it was really teacher driven, and a lot of the workshops that were offered by colleague to colleague. And also we had just an incredible positive speaker that everyone was laughing. At least I was, I don't know. She was great, and it was a nice positive start to the day. So we're trying to embed that in some of our practice as well. You can go to the next slide. I hopefully don't have to talk too much about the S3 Academy and our Open Architects dashboard, because you've heard a lot about that, but really want to highlight because this as a success, because we really have been making a lot of progress with this to expand the use of the whole student review S3 in our schools, and the use of the data dashboard of the Open Architects, which is still expanding different opportunities that will be even this week looking at a few new dashboards that they've just released as well. So we're excited about that. And then I'm going to end it on strategic goal number 4 related to community support. There were kind of 3 main categories in it. You had security, you had capital planning, and you had communication. So what I'm going to talk about is just a quick highlight on capital planning and on safety and security. So you can go, keep going. Keep going. Thank you. And so with community support and capital planning, I know that Jim always gives an update on the subcommittee work. Tonight you'll hear from MUCP, and they'll be talking about some of our field needs. I'd like to remind everyone just of the progress that we've been making on this and the number of meetings that we've had, and just direct people to the website where we're putting all of the materials as we go through with that. But almost all of the steps in that portion of our strategic action plan have been complete, except for the final steps that we need to do in revisions and bringing things forward. But leading up to the plan, we've done most of those steps this year, and it's been a really great collaborative work. Next area I haven't talked too much about this year, and so these are some of the sample drills and trainings, but I work with the SROs. We meet quarterly, minimally, at the district level. They of course meet at all the buildings frequently, but when I meet with them, we're working on our safety, our steps that we wanted to put in place to improve safety and security on multiple levels. And we have a calendar where we're trying to unify and have more consistent timelines for implementing our safety protocols. Some things I'm really proud of, the work of additional trainings we've offered this year. And I just was trained in CPR at our last, and as were many of the administrators, and was offered to staff at our last PD day. That's something that we've added to expand that. I talked about the Narcan training. Some of us were able to do that with the town of Mendon. And some of these have been what we've been working on for a while, but every year we update in all of these categories, what mandated trainings or evacuation drills, or working with bus companies. There's lots of different areas that we add in. And this isn't all that we do here, but it just gives you a sampling of the work that we do to make sure that we have safe and supportive environments for our students.
The colors on that indicate anything like new stuff that's new versus stuff that we have been doing, or
No.
stuff that's administration versus teachers versus?
That's a good, if you want to go back, I can explain. One, I really like colors, so I color code everything. So all I did in my giant spreadsheet that I couldn't link in here, it'd be too big. I just pulled out the categories. So
Okay.
I grouped them.
So it's just categories.
Yeah, I grouped them into categories. So you have like yellow is like the medical stuff. We have the red is like the mandated from the state, you know, a lot of like the fire and safety. And then you have kind of behavioral health. And there's a lot more that we do in addition, that every year we just add of what we're doing into the list so we can kind of track it. But yeah, that's all that is. Yeah, it's Maureen's color coding. That's a good question though. All right, so
Any-
that's I tried to be as brief as I could. I don't know how brief I was. I meant to time it. But it's hard because we have many action steps. You can see in the tracking document, the progress. So if you look at that after and have questions or wondering about something that I didn't talk about, feel free, to reach out as well. And we'll continue our purpose through a lot of what we're doing here and updates that I send you is to give you as much evidence about the work that we're doing or through our presentations, but feel free to reach out at any time as well.
Hey, just one.
Yeah.
Brief question.
Sure.
So you've got in green here as well in the spreadsheet, the internal and external communication expectations were shared.
Yeah.
So when's that? What do you plan for the communication? That sounds really good.
Oh, with the leadership team?
Yep.
Yeah, so at the beginning we meet together in the summer. So we went through expectations for like internally when we communicate to one another and talked about that. And then also externally. So some of the things you'll start to see, well, you should kind of notice certain days that we're getting all of the newsletters that are coming out, on certain days to the staff. Or we use different modes for social media and trying to improve that, or expectations for like website communications and news updates and live feeds. So what we do is we meet to kind of establish what those expectations would be, especially when we have new people who are coming in each year, and then we review it and then we try to make updates to that next year. I'll later on talk about some of the other approaches to communications, like some of the updates we're doing on the website, which I think I've mentioned a couple of times, that I'm trying to improve for this year.
The website is looking so good now. That could be an expose in itself. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of things we can start doing to communicate.
Yeah, and so we just keep building on it. And I'm always open to ideas as well. So if you think of something, or if there, see parents in the room, if there's something you're looking for on the website in particular, like we need to hear that so then we can put it so it's easy to find. But we've started at the district level, and then we're starting to update at each of the school levels as well.
Somehow I get one of those silly errors where you have to log into like a service, like I'll click on a link and send me off into space. So
All right,
I'll
well,
let you know
if that happens, you let me know.
Okay.
We can fix it. Yeah, no, that's a great question. Yeah, I didn't focus on the communication for this, but you'll be hearing about my personal goals at the next meeting, so I'll follow up on some of that. Any other questions or comments?
Just a quick question on the color coding on your spreadsheet.
Mhm.
Are they indicators of where you are right now or where you anticipate being by the end of?
Where we are right now. Yep. So if we'd started it, and then what ends up happening, we say, oh, I don't know why we thought we could do that by November, so we, or I can't believe we thought we could do that action step in 1 year. And then it ends up being in red at the end of the year, and then you'll see things that get carried over. So it's some of this is, when you think about communications, that's always going to be somewhere in the goals, and then they're just specific things we work on each year, and then it kind of carries over. So a lot of that's with curriculum instruction as well. But yeah, we've started a lot, but I imagine some things are going to carry into next year too. Some things we'll be able to say, yeah, we've made a lot of progress and completed.
Questions? On to new business. All right, I think we've got the elementary budget presentations.
Can I do my disclosure?
Sure.
Before we start the elementary budget, just my typical disclosure, my wife is a teacher at the elementary school. I don't believe anything that we're discussing tonight would directly affect her, but in case anything like that has come up, I would recuse myself from any such conversation. And this disclosure is my disclosure conflict of appearance of conflict of interest to cover myself from the laws or whatever it is.
Sounds good.
I feel like I have to listen to that every time I sit up here. I know you're all thrilled to be listening to another budget presentation, so we will try to keep it short. We'll try to balance Maureen's presentation, but thank you for having Lauren and I here tonight. Liz Garden is home with a sick child, so we'll be speaking for her. We all met together today to talk about the things that we wanted to share. And she sent us some notes to add in as well. So you can advance the slide. This slide should look somewhat familiar. It's been on all of the budget presentations. Essentially, our budget process is ongoing. We are constantly looking at what's happening, what needs are coming up and arising in the schools, having discussions with teams, with Clough, with the middle school and the high school, and with central office administrators to figure out how our needs fit in with the needs of the strategic plan as well as the larger district's needs. You can advance. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of the things on this list and start by just thanking the committee for supporting us over the past couple of years. I felt as though when we've come to you with a need, that it has been really positively looked upon and considered. We have massively over the past couple of years addressed some of the class size issues at Memorial. We now have an additional classroom teacher in grades 1, 2, and 4. I have to keep saying that in grades 1, 2, and 4, and our class sizes in those grades, well, at least in 1 and 2 are hovering around 18, 19 per class, which is just so ideal. Our 4th grade, that was the first class that we reduced a few years ago, and that has steadily grown, and we are just getting another new enrollment today, and we're back up to like 22, 23. Which I think speaks to just the growing enrollment at Memorial. I was going through enrollment with my administrative assistant today and just noticing that we've had about 20 new enrollments since August at Memorial, which might not seem like a lot, but I mean, that's essentially a whole nother classroom. So we have really appreciated the support in providing the opportunity to reduce class size at a few of those grade levels. And we've been able to bring in some really outstanding educators who are really making a great impact on their teams and on our school. I'm going to speak for Liz. Nope, you stay on that slide for a second. I'm going to speak for Liz about the therapeutic programming that's been developed at Clough this year. We added a social worker and a severe needs teacher at Clough. And she really wanted me to highlight the benefits that that's had for her students who are most at risk with social, emotional, and in need of therapeutic programming. They've been able to provide more wraparound support, social worker counseling with students, and it enables their school counselor to be more of that tier 1 and tier 2 support instead of always being the tier 3 support that Evan was in the past. And then the last one that I wanted to highlight really was the addition of a full-time team chair for each building. Before this year, Clough and Memorial shared a team chair. So Amy Curry spent 3 days a week at Memorial and 2 days a week at Clough. And this year, and then we had a separate preschool coordinator who was working supposedly 10 hours a week, but it was a much larger job than that. So we were able to bring on a second team chair this year. And each building now has a full-time person to work on pre-K through 4. The biggest benefit that I've seen with this, aside from just having somebody available and having more flexibility with scheduling meetings and whatnot, is really that continuity of service from pre-K into kindergarten that sometimes we really struggled with even developing IEPs that would be appropriate for kindergarten when you only have somebody who's solely focused on the pre-K level. So having somebody who can see that full scope has been really, really beneficial. And there's other things on this list that I'd love to highlight, but for the sake of time, I'm going to stick with those.
So we've been fortunate to receive many grants to support our continued work focusing on deeper learning, high quality curriculum, and equity, inclusion, and belonging. We'd like to highlight, Sam, you can move on. We'd like to highlight quickly some strengths and opportunities for growth in these 3 areas. So there's a lot on here. I'm just really going to pick out one from each one to talk about. So within deeper learning, we've increased the number of teachers trained in Project Lead the Way in both schools. So we now have all grade 4 teachers and all technology teachers in the elementary schools trained. We also have some other teachers in a variety of grade levels trained as well. So we need to continue to train staff in both buildings in order to ensure that all our students will have the opportunity to engage in this deeper learning through Project Lead the Way.
when we're talking about high quality curriculum instruction, as Maureen was talking about, both elementary schools have come together during our professional development time to work on writing. We've been developing common understanding of the standards and expectations in writing at each grade level. And the continued work is in developing a curriculum guide for all grade levels. And we have really enjoyed being able to really work together with both schools, and so that we can all be talking about the same thing and have common language. And as we think about equity, inclusion, and belonging, both schools have developed small groups that consist of students kindergarten through 4th grade that we call families. And our families meet once a month. And that helps kids be able to make connections outside of their classroom. So they're making connections with other students and then also having connections with other adults in the building. We found this really valuable, and both kids and staff have really loved that time. An area we continue to grow in is to how better include portrait of a learner competencies in our daily learning and teaching practices, and making sure that we're giving students the opportunity to reflect on those competencies. We're doing it well, like Maureen said, in our all school meeting, and highlighting some activities that have happened throughout the building, but it's not right now consistent practice that we'd like to continue to grow in.
So now the fun part. Our FY25 requests are kind of lumped into 3 categories. The first are classroom teachers. We are asking to add a classroom teacher right now. I think Clough is thinking 3rd grade and we're thinking 3rd grade, but it really would shift depending on which grade level had the bigger need. Adding 1 more English section to each of those schools. And then we are continuing to grow the 2 strands of SI in both schools. It had kind of fallen away at Clough, and over the past couple of years, we've been able to rebuild. Clough currently has a grade 2, right? A grade 2 and a kindergarten. And the hope would be that we could continue to grow and have 2 more strands of kindergarten, 1 at Clough and 1 at Memorial next year. We should know more about that in the next month or 2. With registration opening for kindergarten, but we would need to hire an additional SI teacher for that expansion. The second request, and I can go a little bit more in depth about this, but it's become increasingly noticeable that we are a growing English language learner community at the elementary level. I'm just going to give you the numbers at Memorial. Last year, we had 26 students at Memorial that received English learner support. 11 of them were considered level 1, 2, or 3, which means that 3.1 or below, which means that they're recommended to receive 90 minutes a day of English language learner teaching from an English language teacher. And then we had 11 more that needed five times a week of 45 minutes. We weren't meeting their needs then. Kids were all getting about 45 minutes a day. There weren't any kids that we weren't able to service them up to 90. And this year we're now up to 35 students at Memorial. So we went from 26 to 35. And we have 20 students who are at that level 3.1 or below. So you can imagine trying to fit that many students, a caseload of 35, into your day is incredibly challenging. And one of the things that ends up happening by default is that our EL teacher is forced to group kids in ways that might not be the best beneficial way for them to grow as English learners. So we are finding that we are in need of an additional teacher to support that caseload that continues to grow. We've had 3 new enrollments at Memorial in the past month, and all 3 have come with EL support. So that's where that request is coming from.
Restate those levels again, just so I write it down.
Yeah, so we went from last year having 11 students who were between level 1 and 3, and this year we have 20. And those students recommended to have 5 times 90 minutes of services.
Thank you.
And then finally, this is a request for the therapeutic model at Clough. An additional support staff, so a paraprofessional to be able to support the students to be more successful in the classroom so that they can go in between therapeutic services and their gen ed classroom with more success. Right now, they aren't always able to send a staff member to support a child in the gen ed classroom. So there is a request for a paraprofessional to support that program. You can advance. And then finally, this is just the long-term requests, and I'm just going to highlight a couple of them. We really hope to just continue to address enrollment, both in Spanish immersion and in our English sections, with the growing, it just feels like I've been here, this is my 4th year, and I just feel like Memorial just keeps growing each year. We're not losing very many students. There's not a lot of students moving out, but we seem to have a steady stream of kids enrolling almost daily, weekly, in Upton anyway.
How does that compare to Clough? Because the data you showed us, Jenny, last week was a little different, right? Because Mendon's actually outpacing Upton in terms of growth.
Not necessarily, it's just we have more Mendon students K through 12 than we had a year ago.
But not at the elementary school level.
Doesn't necessarily mean it's the elementary level.
Got it.
The second piece that I just want to kind of mention is our facilities. We have amazing schools at the elementary level, 2 beautiful buildings that are, I just have to give a shout out to our custodial staff because they keep our buildings looking like they were brand new. But they are 20 years old. And with a 20-year-old building, some things start to deteriorate. In particular, we are noticing roof problems at both schools, in particular in heavy rain and wind, which we've had a lot of this year. So I think, as we think 5-10 years down the road, it should be on everybody's mind that roof replacement is probably going to need to be in the works. As far as safety and security goes, I know that we're looking for a grant to replace old-fashioned keys with a key card system for our buildings. I can't stress how important that is. Just to know who's coming and going in our schools and be able to give access to the people who should have access. So that would be a tremendous upgrade coming in the future. And then finally, the last thing I just wanted to mention, the smart boards at the elementary level are dinosaurs. They are, when I look at them, they were like state-of-the-art smart boards when smart boards first came out. They were the ones that my former town wouldn't purchase because they were so beautiful and expensive. But they are all on their way out. I did an analysis in the building and we have 21 that will need replaced over the next few years. Some are in worse shape than others. But we don't know what we're going to replace them with because obviously technology has changed, but teachers have become very reliant on the technology to be able to present things through slides, through interactive videos, to be able to write on them. And taking those away would not go over very well. So that just needs to be on everybody's radar. And that is it. How did I do, Maureen? Not bad. Any questions for us?
So you talked about adding a SI section back at Clough. Is that to be unwinding some of the SI? Because there, if I'm not mistaken, there are 2 SI sections in a number of the grades in Memorial currently, right?
That would stay. So yes,
The
so
long-term plans to have 3 threads going forward or
one at each building.
one at each building. So it would be more to unwind.
More like what traditionally was done. The year that we have it's our current 1st grade class. Both of the strands were at Memorial. And that was because we had a much larger group of kids that had an interest at Memorial than we did at Clough. And so there were, I think, 12 kids that are being bused from Mendon to Memorial.
Should be any other questions? All right, thank you both.
Awesome, thank you.
Teaching and learning budget presentations.
Was that an inquisitive inflection?
I was just reading.
Maybe.
I don't know if I remember that one.
Yeah.
Share.
We did not do it.
Oh, there we go, see?
Cheryl didn't want to be left out this year.
This is the inaugural run.
There it is. So it's not incremental budget then.
No, as a matter of fact, I'm so glad that you led like that, because really there's much in here that is really about just getting a bigger, like, overall picture on some of the things that you've already heard, right, from the different schools. But there is an important piece of this that's about kind of tying it all together. So, can you advance it? Thank you. So my quote has to do with, effectively drawing on our strengths. And that's really one of the main themes of this presentation. We've got a lot of strengths and we need to build on them. And we need to be thoughtful about how to maintain them. Thanks, Sam. My process actually isn't this exactly because of my position, but I didn't change the slide, and I'll just note that really in that lighter blue area, that's where we're like working with buildings to kind of say, you know, do the needs that we see align? And the idea is that they would. Return on investments for the curriculum instruction budget really have so much to do with some of the things that Maureen talked about in her presentation earlier. We have professional learning that has been built on over the last few years with the ability for us to invest in presenters and to harness the strengths of staff. We've got mentoring and induction program that's really second to none in the Commonwealth. That's a 3-year program that draws on our teacher leadership and has interactions with other districts as well. We have acquired over the last couple of years high quality instructional materials for many of our grades and subjects and supplemental curriculum materials. So there's you know, teachers are in good shape in most areas with their curriculum materials right now. And one of the needs is for us to be thoughtful about how to maintain that. We've also invested in assessment systems, universal assessments, and the ability to kind of bring all that data together. And then of course, and this is the most important really, it's our curriculum instruction is all about our teachers, our skilled teachers who are willing to share their expertise with each other, who build our programs, who help implement the curriculum, who help mentor their colleagues. And that is what keeps this work going in this district. In terms of reductions, reallocations, and efficiencies, it's really linked to grant acquisition. And so some of the things that you've heard about in other places are that we have had grants that have helped fund acquisition of supplemental resources and high quality instructional materials. So we're always looking out for them through DESE and other needs. We've also had grants that have come through partnerships that have helped with assessment systems like iReady, partnerships like STMath and others. And the next slide I'll kind of run through quickly as well. And grants that will, do you mind flipping back just for a sec, Sam? Sorry, I thought that was a little fake. That's a fake on my part. And Open Architect is grant funded for the next couple of years. We've also had programs that we've been able to fund and invest in from grants that we wouldn't have necessarily had otherwise, including summer enrichment. PBL is a partnership, or started with that. The S3 partnership, it's not monetary in the sense, but like we are getting consulting and we're getting support through the through this partnership, and mentoring that's partly grant funded as well. So here's kind of a list of some of that and some of the amounts that we've gotten and some of the monetary grants that we've gotten. And it leads to our strengths and areas of growth, which I will use the same frame. So we're talking about deeper learning. You've heard about PBL and Project Lead the Way. Those are some of the areas that we really invested in terms of professional learning and our strengths. And our area of growth, I'm just going to present kind of going across. Our area of growth is more about supporting and developing the practices. So there's the theme, right? Is like we have
a really good start and some of the materials that we need, and we need to figure out how to develop that and how to get folks using these practices. High quality curriculum and assessments. We have iReady, Dimples, Panorama. Most of those have come in the last few years, and high quality instructional materials as well. And what we need to do is we need to continue to support that. We can't expect teachers to know how to do data inquiry just because they have a platform in front of them. So we need to be able to develop our capacity to be able to continue to use that, to be thoughtful about that, to be able to use our curriculum resources as well. And then, as you heard Maureen talk about, reestablishing review cycles so that when we come to you all for budget requests, we can do so in a way that's staged, that will hopefully make the requests be more measured each year so that they're not lumped into certain years, but they can be more predictable. In equity, inclusion, and belonging, we've done S3, improved translations. That's been a big thing that is related to what Wendy and Lauren were just talking about. We've introduced cultural responsivity, and we've done a lot of professional learning in this space. And where we're going next stepwise is about implementation. It's about really understanding the barriers to access for many of our students, not just our Ls, and embedding cultural responsivity and continuing to grow with our professional learning. So in terms of requests this year, first I'll talk about curricular and then staffing. So the curricular requests, some of which you've heard before in other presentations, are the following. We have some that are annual manipulative purchases that come with the budget that are requested in the budget every year. Social studies, we're at the end of our contract for 6 and 7. We need to renew that. For grades 6 and 7 math, we have a program that is again at the end of its contract. And when I say that, there's a little interesting note here that I'm going to point to in terms of our longer term thinking, because I do think this is new, but newish in the curriculum space, and it's all related to everything that we see in a subscription model that tech has now. 10 to 12, we heard Donna Marianne present on math and that need. And grades 5 through 8 ELA, we're working on identifying resources for the middle school ELA this year. And so that's why that's TBA, but we're estimating that we'll need a high quality instructional material in grade 5 and be able to supplement some of the resources grades 6 through 8. My staffing request that I'm presenting is to support this, this deeper work, basically. What we really need is we need the ability to build our capacity in these areas. And so a curriculum coordinator is the position that would help do this. A curriculum coordinator would be able to build the data inquiry work, be able to work with teams across the district to be able to help support that work. A curriculum coordinator would be able to bring the data inquiry into the curriculum review cycle, making sure that we're being thoughtful about revisiting some of the standards that our students aren't being as successful on as we'd like. And a curriculum coordinator would be able to help teams across the district be able to continue to review and reflect on and bring in their curriculum resources. So in terms of long-term, we're looking at everything in the first column you've heard. In terms of short-term, we'll start with, I actually see the need for, there are some things that are currently grant funded that we should keep on our radar, including Panorama right now, I think is partially grant funded. iReady, I think we have brought into the operating budget. Open Architects is grant funded for the next couple of years. We've got formative assessments for SI and language acquisition that we've been talking about. So we have lots of good formative data for ELA and math. And when it comes to our Spanish immersion program or other language acquisition needs, we're having conversations about how can that be measured. We are looking towards supplemental resources in science for grade 5. That's partly because of the way Project Lead the Way has units that really can be embedded in the elementary grade. And in the middle levels, it's more supplemental. And as a result, in the middle school, we've got high quality instruction material for 6 through 8, but we're starting to think about how we can supplement in grade 5. And then ELA resources, I'm sorry, SEL resources that are on the horizon for K-8, having conversations about those. For staffing, it's, as I said, about building internal capacity. And the EL teacher that we heard about from the elementary schools, their growth and their need is at the elementary level. That's why they're presenting it there. It's we have written grants in such a way that we may be able to use some of that to help supplement for FY25, but we would need to be thoughtful moving forward beyond that. And then for long term, and this is just getting to my last nugget, which I've already foreshadowed, is that a lot of curriculum resources right now are presented in such a way that there becomes an annual cost, or you have a contract over several years. Gone are the days where you just purchased a textbook and that was a one-shot deal. So I do think that it's important that we think about that. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's so important to kind of review the curriculum review cycle and try to get things in a place where they're a little bit more spaced and predictable.
Yes, so that's a great segue. You just wrapped it up. So, I mean, it would be interesting to see. I think we talked about this at one point earlier, not trying to turn this into a budget committee meeting, but I'll do my best not to. Is if you look at some of the like back 3 slides ago, you're looking at the cost of a couple of those applications, you know, 39 grand for 3 years, you know, spread across 3 or 4 grades or whatever. Like just pop it in Excel real quick, right? It looks like it's about $30 per student per application. So it depends how many kids we have. I just took a best guess. But it would be interesting to see if, take the middle school as a great example and say, okay, you got 4 primary subjects, whatever, your math, science, social studies, English, whatever. And across the top, you know, the grade levels. What is the annualized cost to kind of support each class based on your number of students, right? So I mean, so just, you know, you take the one there, the $39,000 divided by 3 grades, divided by whatever it is, 150 kids per grade to pop out to $30 a kid per year,
right?
To fund that piece of software. But if we had a matrix like that, one for each of the 3 schools, I think it would pop up real quick to be like, okay, and it's also good for, as we are going into budget committee and we are going to open session, that say, guys, listen, the reality is it's $148 per child on annualized subscriptions. And that's the reality of the world we're in today. It's not textbooks. It's not perpetual licenses. It's subscription. Every software vendor is moving that way, but I'd love to see it by the 3 schools and see how that pop out. The second piece of it is, and being very close to what I do on a daily basis, you know, there's a lot of vendor draw to give you free subscriptions and get you hooked on the Kool-Aid. And then year 3 comes by and you just, doesn't matter what the price is. And I think, you know, you're very impressive for presentation a couple of months ago on open architects. At some point, it's worth a conversation with a vendor to say, hey, guys, we're really loving this, but we're going to pause on how much more we implement until you give me the pricing. I know I got 2 more years free. I want to see that pricing in fiscal year 26 and 27, 28 now. And I might even sign a contract to commit to it. I'm not going to give you the dollars. But what you don't want to do is get 2 more years into the development to the point where it's just so core to what we do. If they come in with a $700,000 bill, it's like, oh my God, it's either shut down what we do or pay the $700,000. So anyways, those are 2 pieces.
That's a really good example, by the way. That's a very good example, because that's basically what they did is they related a bunch of tables out of the databases from each system and built a Power BI front end to it.
You got it.
It's honestly, you could get some of your students to do the same thing. You know, so how much you're actually spending on those types of systems would be interesting. So,
but it's a great system, it's a great integration, it's great, but that's their sales model, right? 3 years free and then pitch. But Anyways, just my 2 cents. It might be worth a conversation with them.
Those are really good points. I really like your idea, especially in the first one with breaking that piece down. I think that's a really good idea to take a look at that. In regard, just to know too, they're, Cheryl, Jay, Colleen are working on like this, we're calling it the curriculum audit, but the pieces, kind of the whole spreadsheet evolve, the digital applications and, subscriptions and all of that. And who's user use and like getting feedback and we are taking things offline. So just know that, like, there are things that we talked about and tried, and I don't want to tell you what we're not taking off, but yeah, but like, there are things that we're making choices too, where we're saying we're not going to continue with this platform that didn't take off, which maybe had potential. And then we're applying funds kind of to, sustain some of the others. So we're doing a really good job of trying to evaluate that. I want to thank them for it's a lot of hard work. They've been doing this year to do that as well.
I just want
Yeah.
to second that as well.
Are you planning on sharing that audit with us at some point, or is that just something you're doing in central office?
Well, I mean, I want to give you an example. So I was sitting through like John and Mary Ann did, they do their school council presentations and they present the school council with all of the investments they're making and whether or not they're really recommending continuing those investments. Since I've been attending those, they've made a couple of big decisions on whether or not they're going to continue software and they didn't. They went to something else. So they're always making decisions based on the allocation of money that they've got, whether it's worth it to continue, and could we be doing something better with that money? So it's not necessarily an increase. It's just utilizing resources the best way. It's probably hard to bring all those choices together, but I can see it happening in real time. I'm sorry, I didn't want to talk about that.
Yeah. I don't know where we're at with the audit because they're still doing it, and certainly we can always meet anything offline too and just like kind of go through stuff. But I know they're in the middle of it. We probably won't go and present the whole thing here because that'd be a giant list, but certainly more than happy to share that too.
Just taking my school community, putting my parent hat on from it. There's one that specific app that they're using in the elementary school that I'm not a fan of, and so I'm kind of curious what the cost to trade off is.
And what would that be? I'm gonna guess. I'm thinking, what is it?
Yeah, it has a cute little penguin mascot.
That was pretty good at informing I don't think I was gonna go anywhere.
It's the Candy Crush of educational applications, and I'm not a fan of it.
Love it. All right. Well, we can talk. See what we can do to commit to. That's good though. No, there are some though where I was wondering if you're gonna say a different one that have come up like at other levels that have been like, kids are like, I hate this. And parents are like, I hate this. And like, maybe that was one. But then sometimes it's so embedded in some of our practices for teacher practices and, we're look to see if there's something better and some things have come up, over the years. So we do take that feedback.
But this will position us nicely
Yeah.
to be able to do those shifts as well, because then we, understand the uses, we understand the cost, and we can kind of have conversations with folks about why can't we try this?
Can you talk a little bit about just as we're starting to have conversations with people in the community and helping them understand what some of these roles are when people are asking for additional staff and how they connect? I know in previous budget cycles, we've funded some instructional coaches.
Mm-hmm.
How does this curriculum coordinator position connect with that and build that practice?
Yeah, that's great. So the curriculum coordinator position would be more in terms of focusing on in terms of thinking about things. We think about things in terms of curriculum, and I will talk about data in that space. And then in terms of building practices, right? And so what our coach does is our coach works with teachers directly, goes into classrooms, helps them plan, helps provide feedback so that they can kind of start to embed some of the practices that we're working on. what a curriculum coordinator would do would be more in terms of like using the data to identify standards in our curriculum, right? And suggest layouts to how we do our curriculum mapping. And would be working with teams regularly across the district. So it wouldn't be so much in the classroom and working on pedagogy, more working on with teams so that we can figure out what we're doing and what's our pacing and where is the data showing that we need to spend a little bit more time, how we can assess what we're doing in the classroom. So does that help?
Yeah, and just as a reminder too, we have one instructional
Right.
coach who works with Clough and then grades 5 and 6. So that's all we have coaching too. Some districts might have coaches at each building, you know, through especially K-8. Or a lot of districts have, you know, STEM coordinator, K-8, math coordinator, or, you know, as you know, the different types of things. So Michelle's doing a great job, but it's a lot for one person, for sure. It'll be really good to expand a lot of this work at some point.
All right, well, thank you very much, Cheryl, appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we've got the Mendon-Upton Community Project Presentation on books.
Oh, okay. You want to stand? Okay. Right, I'll just jump in if that's okay before they get started. So we've been working collaboratively with MUCP and they've been attending all of the capital planning meetings. I know many of you attend that as well. And their presentation, they do such a good job in talking about the needs of the fields that we asked if they after they presented at capital planning that at one of these upcoming meetings that we could do it kind of more, even though that's an open meeting at those capital meetings, they do it in more public forum. And so everyone on the committee would be able to hear about it from them. So I really appreciate your work and coming tonight.
Great. Well, thank you. And thank you to the school committee board for having us tonight. We'll go to the next slide. So we'll try to keep this under 10 minutes. We're going to go through introductions of our team. We'll talk about current conditions, the desired future state. We'll do a brief analysis of the synthetic turf versus an organic turf, which is grass. And we'll share some of the community feedback that we've gotten thus far. So who are we? Some of you know us, like Maureen had said, from the subcommittee. We are, for those of you who don't, we are MUCP, which is Mendon-Upton Community Project. We're a nonprofit organization working in partnership with the community and the administration at MURSD. Our goal is to help improve playing conditions and equitable access to athletic and recreational facilities for the town of Mendon and Upton residents. And let me introduce our team. So we have a few with us today. Bill Casey and Bill McGinnis is our co-president. Myself, Nicole Casello, is the vice president. Kara Boats is over there as our treasurer. Stephanie Kinney is our clerk. Kristen Schmidt, who couldn't be here tonight, does our communications and social media. And Amy Magazoo, who does our fundraising efforts. And we have a great team. And like Maureen had said, over the past 2 years, we've been really grateful for the opportunity to speak on this, this issue. Thank you. And so we'll go through a couple key accomplishments just to give you an idea of what we've been working on. We've had a lot of community engagement. We've been building awareness around the needs for the fields. Fundraising for engineering, our design, the board is behind me. So we've been able to fundraise this for our local Allen Engineering. He was kind enough to help us with this design. We've been restoring existing fields, and we've also had a cleanup day, which was very successful with the students at Nipmuc and Clough. They all came out. We sort of took the activity of just cleaning up the fields. And so that also brought awareness to the community. working with the MURSD, we've pushed for deep wells at the Nipmuc school. We've also broken ground on the stone dust path at Nipmuc, which is also in that design that we'll talk about later. And like I said, we've had the platform at the subcommittee meeting to talk more about this. So I'll turn it over to go to the next slide. Bill, and he can talk about our current conditions.
Like, I'll walk you through some of the pictures we've taken over the current facilities. Some have joined us when we've taken the walks. I know Sean was one of the ones that joined us taking the walk over the summer before to get a real grasp of what we're looking at. Maureen was out there as well, and Jay. Current conditions are, I mean, we go back to when the school was built. The school was built and we only had a soccer team, a baseball team, a softball team, and basketball teams. You know, there was no track teams, there was no football teams, there was no lacrosse teams. All that stuff has grown over the years, but our facilities haven't. Our facilities haven't kept up with what the sports are going on. So now we're inundated, especially now. I know Chris just stepped out for a minute, but with youth, sports wanting to use the high school, wanting to play up here, and needing field space, and we're just lacking field space and lacking repairing the fields we have because we don't have any room to shut anything down. So a couple of slides are, the first slide, when you get the middle picture is basically when you're walking in the path from here to the backfields. It's just a muddy pit. Even the slightest rainstorm turns it into a mud pit and it's just terrain to get out there is, not too accessible and unsafe, quite frankly. For us, never mind grandparents going out to watch games and, if you need to get a medical out there or something, it's just it's a tough way to get out there. So the next picture would be the softball field, not having the infield's all grown in over the year, when you can't drag it through the course of the year, the weed mass just grows up, hard packs the soil. Couple of these pictures were when we had that drought 2 years ago, and the shallow well. Well, if it's a shallow well and it doesn't rain, we don't get water. So we have pushed and worked, and successfully they just got a nice deep well out there that's going to help us alleviate that problem, going forward. So just bringing a lot of things up, working together of addressing some of the needs as we go. Next slide will be, pictures from the Misco school. So the Misco track there with the football goalpost, which, hosts soccer now down there, as well as middle school track. And the high school ships the kids down to go train on that track down there. This past year, we got out there to grade it and, get all the weed mass out of the track, which, been a few years overdue that we got that taken care of. Those same pictures there are there, the baseball field is the top one. And the bottom one, looks over towards the barn and the softball field that's over there. Their infields are in the same condition. But that field that's in between, the multi-purpose field that's used for, youth sports as well as school sports. Now that our Misco has field hockey teams as well as soccer teams that use that all the time, these surfaces just aren't, it's like playing on asphalt, which is unsafe. Going to the next slide. Just talking about some desired needs of coming up, so we can take, so Memorial and Clough, both right now, their fields aren't really used for any everyday sports like a high school or the middle school where they don't have sporting teams. And some of those fields are maintained by the towns and owned by the towns and irrigated and this and that. And the Memorial is beautiful, Clough is, beautiful up front, and, but the two schools that are in the district, we're behind. We're behind on times. It's just, I think we can all agree on it, but it's just a matter of how do we get there? So we started here with the bringing up of, having a turf field or not so much just a turf, but a track with lights and a stadium setting that can be used for community, for the track. It's used for the sports that we have. If there's many things that can be used for in fundraising and, a revenue source. Band competitions can go on them. It's just, now you can attract people because you have nice facilities. We do have a deep well out front that has saved us the past couple of droughts, but I think Jay was about 5 years ago we put that one in. Yeah, so that saved us there, which we're trying to hope that's what's gonna help us out back of putting that deep well in with a better maintenance plan. And then, like, again, at Nipmuc here, it's that front field of having a concession stand, a track, lights that you have, Friday night lights, Thursday night lights, Saturday night light, whatever you have, not even just for the whole school, but it's the whole town community, to bring the community together on an event. I think, Chris can correct me if I'm wrong, but the school spent about $4,000 on renting facilities last year because of rain, because of playoff games. And the youth soccer program donated $1,500 as well for them to go practice over NEFC before a game, because it's a little different playing on turf and control than it is playing on grass. So, it's $5,500 that's spent going elsewhere where our youth sports are paying as well, that they could be paying us. They could be paying as a revenue source of here, that they could, charge, keep a kitty, and boom, boom, boom. Now you're making money. You can host jamborees for all sports. That I know my path is, when my kids grew up, we could never host any of that stuff because we didn't have a big enough facility to entertain anything. But now that's a revenue source if you upgrade the facility. Misco, bringing in Misco, same thing there, getting a deep well into that middle field. The back track has a nice irrigation with a deep well, but to get one on that side field to alleviate a lot of that hardness and, unplayable conditions. Again, the same here as there is the proper maintenance. Get on a nice 5-step plan. Every field needs 3 things. It needs sun, it needs food, fertilizer, and it needs water. If it doesn't have all 3 of those, you're gonna change your consistency of your soil, no different than your house. Just your house, there isn't thousands of kids playing on your lawn every day, compact in the same areas. And then basically at both of them, one of the big things is when you do all this stuff, it's bringing them up to ADA compliant. A lot of us, as our parents are getting older, that want to come watch your kids and this and that, and they can't get to fields, on good physical days, never mind somebody in a wheelchair or somebody on crutches or, anything that it's just not, we haven't kept up with times. Like I said, these fields were built when the school was built, and we haven't grown or changed that. So that's what we got for desired. And then, so the plan we had was just, over here. So as you can see, when we first did it, the one to the left is the one out front. So we started this almost 10 years ago, and, it's been a while, but we couldn't do a track or anything out front. We raised money and came up with money to do a survey of where the actual wetlands were, where they restricted us, this and that. We were able to tweak and turn the field sideways a little bit, just enough that could fit a track around the front field. And so that's what the front one is there. And then all the blue there is the baseball and softball field. So that would be like redesigning the softball field so it sits the same way as the baseball field sunwise, and it doesn't have softball's left field running into baseball's right field, during games that they're both playing at home, or if somebody's trying to walk down to get there. And to get that softball field, instead of a 170-foot home run, a real 200-foot home run, so moving that back a little bit. And then you can't really see it, but there's around the side, what we're trying to do, and we're actually started clearing, is thanks, Nicole, it's basically a maintenance and a fitness path. It looks like years and years ago when it was built, there was stone dust or something around the sides of the field. So, if you need to drive out with maintenance, you could stay on the path. Or if you want to go for a nice mile jog, walk, ride your bike, you could go around the sides of the field. And it's just a real nice way of like bringing in community aspect to, if a parent is here dropping off the little kid for the first time, doesn't want mom and dad to leave, but you want to give them some space, you can take a walk around the field. You're not leaving the facility, this and that. So it's a real community inviting thing to do. And it's a actual low cost to the whole project, but it makes the project a big community feel that you can just have a nice little path. And one of the big things is it gives our kids in this school in the fitness in the gym classes, because there's nothing outside for them up there. There's no basketball hoops, there's no tennis courts, there's none of that stuff. So on rainy, dewy days on the grass, they do laps walking around the school on the sidewalk. So this will be a nice little path that they could go walk around, a mile loop, this or that, you know, fitness path to stay in shape. And again, like I said, the biggest drive for that is it's a whole community feel to it. And then I will turn it over to our survey.
You want to go
one
more?
more.
Just real quickly announce it.
All right, so a lot of people do, and this comes up in the questions, okay, synthetic turf versus organic turf, you know, what do you say? What is this? Is it safe? Is it, you know, this or that? So there is so many ways to look at it. If, real quickly, if you just did a track, lights, all that stuff in the front, and you prepped it and just did a turf field, or you did a grass field, by going with the grass route, you would save about $500,000. On that grass that you're saving that $500,000, just take the life expectancy of turf between maintenance is 10 to 14 years. If you take that $500,000 you saved, now you divide that up yearly of how much are you paying to water it? How much are you paying to mow it each week? How much are you paying to line it? How much are you paying to fertilize it? Through those 10 years, to the cost that you have on the turf is a maintenance. The maintenance that you do on a turf is you drag it and you run a magnet over it. Basically, it's an aerator that goes around. The school already owns the RTV that could pull it. The equipment that would take to do that would be about $15,000 up front, and that would last you the whole 15 years of doing the maintenance of what you need to do. Usually every 4 to 6 weeks, depending on how much you use the field, and outside organizations use the field. So that savings up front of grasses and that, people always say that, oh, it's so much cheaper to do that. You still have to prepare it, you still have to mow it, you still have to maintain it, so it doesn't, you gotta take care of it.
Increase. The other thing we'll mention just is the not limited by climate, or it increases the playtime, right? So now over the years since the school started, we have, like Bill said, we have youth sports that want to come and play, rather than have them go somewhere else. There's no downtime to the synthetic turf. Can continuously play. There's no, it's not affected by weather. You don't have to rest the fields.
Especially the goal most, like the goal most that get beat up in field hockey, lacrosse, and soccer. Those goals never change. Football will, you know, play all over the field, but those goal balls, they stay in the same spot. So you can, Chris can attest, you can go outside right now and you could tell, close your eyes, you can walk down the field, you know where the girls lacrosse net is, you know where the boys lacrosse net is, and you know where the field hockey net is and soccer nets. But those things, as you're doing, if you go to a synthetic turf, and there's many different types of synthetic turf, it's come a long ways in the years. I know everybody will talk about PFAS and this and that. There is a lot of safe substitutes that people are using for that stuff now that, you know, we could go through all that stuff at a later time. But as she said, is like, there's no downtime resting. It's like, you know, it could pour the way we're getting rainstorms now. It could rain 4 inches and you could be playing on it this afternoon or tomorrow. It's not like a field. If we had a grass field that you wouldn't be playing on that for a few days. So the downtime on that is, you know, it's right away.
And I think the last thing to just note on this slide is that, you know, the turf can result in fewer injuries. It's got a softer impact and minimizes player injuries, whereas what we have for current conditions are uneven terrain, divots, holes, like Bill had said, that really compacted area that just isn't great for playing and injuries. So, you know, there's a benefit to it, I think, for the players as well.
And anybody that's familiar with turf, so the last thing is we're not trying to be the first ones.
Right.
We're just about the last ones. Every town touching us, with the exception of Hopedale, has multiple turf fields, sports fields, complexes. You know, we're way behind.
So to just go through that.
Do you guys know that, so you got 8 or 10 pictures here?
Yep.
And this is more of a curiosity. I mean,
Yeah.
guys, I get it. I'm on board. I understand. I think it's needed, all that kind of thing. But How many of the fields were built not in conjunction with the school we built? Or an in-town development site?
Well, all right, we can go through Hopkinton. They were redone when they did it. Westboro,
You know, Hopkinton had it in high school.
The top one is being built now. They have many, but these
Yeah.
particular two, and I think that one in Hopkinton below was in the last couple of years. I don't know exactly, but
redid it.
Yep.
They redone the whole thing.
Westboro,
yeah.
Westboro was done after the school was built. That top one, the one you see, they have two. The one at the top of the hill was just recently done.
Yeah.
That used to be a grass practice field.
Okay.
That they couldn't maintain. They turned it over to a turf one. Oxbridge is, Chris gave us idea. When was Oxbridge put in?
With the school.
Yeah, Oxford
With,
was put in.
with the school. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And Northbridge.
So some of them, to borrow in points, it
It's
is,
more just a curiosity.
Yeah.
Just a.
yeah. So Northbridge was done.
To the next.
Northbridge, the turf is new. The stadium was there, the track was there.
Yeah.
They took out the natural and put the turf in. So that was done. Grafton, I think you can speak on that, Maureen, right? You know,
was-
one or two of them over there.
Yeah, and when I was there, we did the second one, we added that in order to maximize, because there's such little space in
Yep.
the area, so that was one new school, and that was 10 years ago.
Yeah, and I can say the one in Medway has three of them. Medway put their one in originally when they did their school. The other two, grass did not grow into the specs, this and that, and they had waited the time to redo it.
Yeah.
And then they turned them, held them back and put both in as turf on those other two fields.
So the last thing we'll say, just to leave you with, I think we've made our point, but if you were to take away something before we get to the community survey results, we feel very strongly that athletics is part of the academic curriculum. It's not just a luxury to have these new fields. We also feel that as a community, if we stay competitive in all aspects of education, it increases the value of our towns and everybody benefits from that. So that's our mission statement. And I think we could go through very quickly some of the community survey results that just polls how people feel in the community about the things we've talked about.
Sure. Actually, can you go back one, Sam?
Oh, yeah, please.
Thank you. So I'll go very briefly through these results. But really the reason we had this survey put out there was because we wanted to understand the respondents. Are they currently using facilities like this? Before we even asked them their opinion on them, are they out there using them? So we had 77 responses total for our survey, which given our communities isn't huge, but it was pretty good for having a survey out there that was public, right? So we had 80
better than mine.
80% of our respondents said, yes, they do. So great. We already knew our baseline. We have people who are interested in recreation. Go ahead, Sam. Our next goal was to gauge the overall perception of the current facilities of our both recreational and sports facilities within the two towns. So what you can see is between numbers 1, 2, and 3, as they rated them 1 through 5, very unhappy to totally satisfied, 86% were neutral to very unhappy. So it was pretty loud what was going around out there and how people felt about it. You can go to the next one, Sam. So finally, what we wanted to do is provide a few examples of upgrades or new offerings that we could bring to the community and rate their level of interest, just to give them some ideas to see where we could start, kind of a baseline. So the first one was a marked level walking path. So much like Bill was talking about. And this one, people overwhelmingly, enjoy that idea. We had 48% of people say yes on that one. Next one, Sam. Upgraded athletic fields for the middle and high school. And as you know, we're focusing there because like Bill mentioned, we have really great fields already in Clapham Memorial. And this is where our student athletes are focused, is Misco and Netmuck. So that one was pretty clear as well. People were very excited and interested in having some upgraded fields at these two schools. The next would be the inclusion of a new updated school field with restroom facilities, concessions, grandstands, breast box, all of that kind of thing to really make it, state of the art or first in class here. People are pretty interested in that concept too. And I think one of the things that we would focus on as well is the fact that like with restrooms or with a concession stand, you're looking for the ADA compliance again. You're making sure that when we do have folks who are in wheelchairs or, on crutches, like you mentioned, we have our student athletes maybe coming, if they're injured, they're still wanting to come. You've got to make sure that they're able to get to and from restrooms easily and being able to access that. And then next is upgrades to ensure those with mobility issues are easily and safely accessing the facilities. So obviously that's important to everybody. And I think one of the pieces we've spoken about too is how easily it is to get an ambulance through too. So if we have injuries on the backfields, can we get ambulances easily in and out, or car, stretchers, whatever we need to do. So being able to think through this plan with better access, with wider paths, with more, the crushed stone is easier to get back and forth through. That was important to everybody as well. So that was a very fast overview of the survey, but overall, it seems that people are interested and excited about upgrades and additions, and we're here to help facilitate those conversations.
Answer any questions that you have.
I just want to point out that saying the hypothetical that we need an ambulance to get back there, that's not hypothetical at all. We've had that problem in the past. It's not only is it extreme, it's a dramatic situation that could have been prevented, but it's also very embarrassing that we're risking people's lives by not having a pathway out to our fields, I have to say. So I feel very emotional about it.
So I guess the $1 million question, that's probably more than $1 million question. But what does the board cost?
What does the
Oh,
board?
that board,
So-
that design.
Yes, so the design from when we started, and you'll see the second field that I didn't bring up, the second green one closest to me.
Yeah.
That was redoing that, we'll call it the lacrosse field, hockey field, as well as a turf field.
Sure.
And that is like, once we started getting prices back, that's gone back to, okay, we need to upgrade that field with the deep well and redo that. So the cost that getting that one with lights and everything has been put on the, obviously the back burner. But to do a front stadium, you know, with a track, with a field, with lights, with a concession stand, with a press box. And to do upgrades on, you know, the wells in, but to do upgrades on stuff out back. The number that was came in was, yeah, it was
Yeah,
9,
10.
it was 9 something, and we did build a lot of high escalators and construction in that, 'cause that.
Right, I was gonna say, so we
The
wanna
call.
just remind you, and we have a breakdown that we can share. But
Yeah.
we're talking about it from,
It's about $10 million.
About, yeah, about $10 million for, you know,
and keeping in mind, those are construction costs, those are permitting costs. That's not just building the field, because that sounds very high when you mention that for ground or grade or turf or whatever you want to call it. It really, it's from soup to nuts, right? And it's a very conservative approach, so that, you know, once we get bids, we can, you know, get several bids
Narrow
and
it
you
down.
lower the number a bit, hopefully. But
goes by the size of what you want for a concession stand. Goes by the
correct,
size
there's lots
what
of
you want.
opportunities
You want
to
bleachers
scale.
on both sides, so we can scale that right
Yep.
back down to something that's more manageable
Yeah.
and feasible.
But
Yep.
I think as we talked about at either the budget committee this week, last week, whatever, it says Monday, like, understand the bookends.
Mhm.
Is always the
Yep.
the important part, right? So what is the Cadillac, what is the Chevy?
Yeah,
You know,
right.
look like
So
that.
capital, they did a great presentation, similar, but a little bit more in depth for capital planning,
Yeah.
and the original cost of everything, which still wasn't the Taj Mahal of athletic
Right.
complex.
Yeah.
It was 15 million, and then pared down to about 13, and then even further down to about 10. So it's not like 10 is the Cadillac.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's the
Thank you.
Toyota, if you will, right?
Yeah. Thank you.
It's good value. It's
Yeah.
very value driven.
And you know, we've told Maureen and the subcommittee group that we're willing to help and stay on board to just in any fashion that we can. I think there's been a lot of interest in fundraising, you know, for whatever we can do
Yeah.
to support that. We don't want to just come to the table with an ask. We want to be part of the solution. So
So that's the main piece too, is the whole fundraising kickoff avenue. We can't go out and actively fundraise and say, we're gonna get this and do this until we get, you know, support and approval and blessing, because there is businesses out there that will support something like this. I can just give an example of Dunkin' Donuts, you know, has their logo stamped on Charlton Dudley's field. You know, so they sponsored that almost to a complete build.
Northbridge with
You know,
Unibank.
Northbridge with Unibank. It's just, so there is avenues out there to go solicit for fundraising. Obviously, it's gotta be all approved that, hey, listen, we wanna get this done and do this. And then we can go out and get that asked for selling the billboards, selling the bricks in front of the concession stands for the businesses like Football Now, sell those banners that are on the fences that, you know, can stay up for a couple seasons with the support, you know. But you can do those more permanently with in concrete, you know, this and that. The businesses around town will love to have, you know, write-offs. And sometimes when you do that, where I work, people have done that for like a 10-year commitment. They'll give you so much money for 10 years and that's funded. And as you're paying off, you're getting some of that money to be paying that off. So there's many avenues to go with the fundraising that we're excited about that too. It's just to get that going. So that could take it from a, you know, Toyota to a Cadillac, you know, so.
I mean, just, if you don't know the answer, it's a very,
That's fine.
but like, if you look at some of the other school pictures that you put up there, I mean, do you think they're fundraising 5%, 50%? I mean, sometimes I'm just gonna give an analogy, like, you know, years ago, we were kind of going for one of the overrides and, you know, folks wanted to fundraise and I think, you know, Dr. Bruce Check was still here and gave a good example of cast. Listen, it's hard to fundraise for $600,000 prom.
Yep.
You know, when you want to bring kids on a school bus and you need 10 grand, you can go figure out how to raise 10 grand.
Yep.
Is there, from what you've seen from other municipalities, is there an appetite to have a substantive amount, or would it be more kind of putting the icing on the cake?
Does it depend on whether you have Dell in your in
Well,
town?
that's, look what Westboro has, Hopkinton has, right?
You sort of hit it off. It's a hit or miss.
Yeah.
Sometimes you walk into that like a Dunkin' Donuts at the Charlton Dudley School, you know, that Dunkin' Donuts funded the whole thing. Hopkinton, they build it in their businesses. Like with EMC and some of those businesses, they start open businesses, they allocate so much money to go towards parks and playgrounds and growth. Obviously, in these two towns, we don't have that. We don't have that growth. We don't have that CPA money that you can just go because it's in one town and one school. So it's going the CPA route. It's just, it could be done, but it's very difficult and long to go to two separate towns to get two separate votes to get funded.
No, it's, I don't know if it's appropriate to talk about this right now, but you guys have pretty good logic established in your presentation. There's some facts and everything that we could go into depth right here for, but it seems like it would be an appropriate thing to try to collaborate with you on the messaging and communication of communities, and that's a huge part of what we have to accomplish.
Yep.
We're going to do this, so.
Yeah, we're happy to jump in with that.
Yep.
I could add one thing. I think when we have a more complete capital plan and we have drafts, you know, it's gonna go through many iterations. And I think even once we have a draft, we're gonna be changing that as we go. What's key for our piece of that is that they know that we're on board with the need for upgrading athletic complex, and that's part of our capital goals that we have now. How we get the funding and financing is sort of an approach to that, and communicating is secondary. But you know, I think it's you've been at the meetings, and you know that is people sitting around the table, you know, you have a great presentation and we're on board. It's a matter of process and, you know, what that could be down the road. It's in there, you know, for people who haven't looked online, it's in there, but how we get there is the bigger question.
Like when people start to understand what we're really proposing here and you know, what these guys put together, I think they'll get excited about it because it is kind of fun. So, you know, other than it being a large expense, it's something to look forward to. I know there's going to be a lot of back and forth in the communities, but I think as long as we communicate what the intent is, I think it's kind of a positive feeling.
Any questions? I just want to close it out by saying, hey, thank you. And, you know, but I sincerely mean that. There's, say this politically correct, right? There's so often people complain and this, that, but actually get a group of people dedicated to work on it and this and that. I mean, you're like us, we're a group of volunteers.
Yeah.
Volunteers. And Can't thank you enough for doing this, and obviously we need to stay tight in capital planning and the next step and road shows and figure out what that means. But
Yeah, and we're, like you said, we're gung ho, we're here for it.
Thank you very
Rob,
much.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's back to the agenda. Um, Subcommittees, thank you. All right, capital planning, Jim.
Yes, so we were supposed to have a capital planning meeting this past Tuesday that was postponed due to the snowstorm. We'll work on rescheduling that. All the updates can be found on the capital planning webpage. I will mention that I participated in an MSBA roundtable last Thursday, which was very informative, along with Dr. Cohen. I know Dr. Cohen has also been working with the towns to understand where they are with their budgeting and their debts and whatnot. I also today actually spoke with a software company that works with like how to share with the community, how to present a capital plan and make it presentable. So it's not just a spreadsheet.
And I can add too, because I put it in the agenda, but forgot to mention it, just related to MSBA statement of interest. Because I wanted to put it on, and I'll make sure it's on the next agenda too. We're starting the statement of interest for the roof at Nipmuc, and the deadline for that is March 1st. We'll need to come forward at the next meeting where the school committee would have to sign off that you're aware of what that is. So I just wanted to mention that now, so then that way at the next meeting, we make sure it's on the agenda as well. So that's the first.
The roof of that.
Yeah, that's the first one that we have to submit by that deadline. To where Jay and I are in the system. We attended that as well, and we'll be working on that.
Great. Sean, budget?
Okay, so we met last week and we're getting a lot more of the pieces in place for the budget, how it's gonna map out. There might be some new information, I don't know, from the current presentations, or is this incorporated into what we saw last week? Pretty much. So right now, there is a gap between our current revenue for the school and the expenditures. And now comes the discussion about where the priorities stand and what proposals are going to be to the town and to both towns. So that's becoming more mapped out, but we have a few more dates in the budgeting cycle for the state, what their budgets are going to be to fully detail it. But we're starting to get a clearer picture of where our budget stands. Got to start discussion with the towns. So I don't remember when the next budget subcommittee meeting was.
February 7th.
February 7th.
I don't quote me,
Yeah,
but that's what's in my head.
February. I just don't,
Yeah.
I can remember.
A couple weeks.
So my apologies for that, but that's it. Any questions? Be happy to answer.
Sounds good. Vicky, negotiations?
We met with Murda on January 10th, and we have subsequent meetings scheduled for January 24th, February 7th, February 27th, so every 2 weeks, when February vacation. So.
Right. Yeah, I missed that one. I was really excited about BEDG.
Exciting. So yeah, so we do have our second reading of BEDG, so which is some minutia about minutes for meetings. So if anybody has any questions about that, but we need a motion to approve that.
I move to approve the updated policy BEDG minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
So our next meeting is February 12th.
All right, superintendent evaluation, Carrie?
Yeah, so Dr. Cohen will be presenting her mid-year updates on her superintendent goals at our February 12th school committee meeting, and we will be meeting as a subcommittee between now and then.
We just need to finalize the date, so we could do that to get it up.
Yeah.
All right, I don't have any other matters that I do not anticipate within 48 hours of the posted meeting. Future agenda items, we'll wrap up the budget presentations, we got the much awaited school calendar, superintendent goals and SEL data. So with that, I'd like to move to executive session. We'd like to make a motion to enter an executive session according to exemption number 3 to discuss the strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the public body, and the chair declares. We will return to the open session only for the purpose of adjourning this meeting. Roll call is needed.
So moved.
Roll call. Oh, I think we need a roll call.
Aye, Matt Egan, aye.
Carrie Lawrence, aye.
Vicky Levinson, aye.
Eric Brown, aye.
Sean Nicholson, aye.
Jim Ford.
We are adjourned to executive session at 9:02.